And now our special guest, our show guest, Mike Heiser, joins us as we talk about an update of his work on ancient astronauts. So get ready for that on Coast to Coast AM. Dr. Mike Heiser, expert in ancient languages, texts, and religions, particularly the Hebrew Bible as well. In 2005, Mike was named by Fate magazine as one of the 100 most influential people in ufology. He has had a lifelong interest in the paranormal, especially ancient astronauts, and here he is on Coast to Coast. Michael, how are you?
Very good, George. Thanks for having me back.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving up an hour, by the way, of your time.
Well, I hope this is as interesting as the last 2 hours was.
It will be. We're going to just compress a lot of your great information into 2 hours. And, Michael, we're going to talk a lot about the work of Zecharia Sitchin and yours, but I wanted you to know tonight, we were going to have Zecharia on Sunday as a guest, but I guess he's in the hospital tonight. And
wow,
we don't know. His publicist, he's 90 years old.
Yeah.
And his publicist just sent us a note and said he can't come on. He's in the hospital, and so let's say a little prayer for Zecharia. Jeez.
Absolutely. I'm surprised that he has as much energy as he does.
Oh, I know. I was with him earlier here. He was given a Lifetime Achievement Award by the Conscious Life Expo here in Los Angeles, and I had the honor of introducing him to the crowd at a luncheon, and this guy has got so much energy. He was standing when he came in, and when I introduced him, and of course, me being the honorable one I am, I said, Zecharia, why don't you have a seat? And he went, no, I'll stand, thank you. But anyways, what we will talk about tonight is not a personal attack on his theories. It's your opinions on his work, on some of the questions. And I wanted to point that out, especially with him in the hospital.
Yeah, I've never actually met him, but everything I've heard from those who have makes me think that he's, a very cordial, kind of guy that you would just, sit down and have a cup of coffee with and enjoy the conversation.
Well, and the one thing, as you know, Michael, about research, it's subject to interpretation by the researcher.
Sure.
And
there's a lot of that. It's just part of the enterprise.
Yep, absolutely. History Channel has just taped 5 more programs that have been on the air on ancient aliens and ancient astronauts. Just an incredible series. Tell me about your relationship with the History Channel.
Oh, well, it's not good. They actually asked me to be part of what would have been the second one. Mm-hmm. And I declined because of my experience in 2003 with the History Channel, where they flew me to Los Angeles. So that was the great part. I got a trip to Los Angeles. I got to see a few things, and we did 2 hours of taping. And basically, everything was cut out of it. And I actually think that was a good thing, though, because there were a few people who they did interview that they were smarter than I was. They insisted on audio taping the interviews. And then when the show actually aired, it was kind of astonishing, really stunning, to hear how they had spliced one sentence from one place to a remainder of a sentence from another place, and really made some people, I think, misrepresented some of the ideas that some of the other presenters had. So I felt a little relieved that wasn't done to me, but at the same time it was pretty clear that they had an agenda, in what they were doing, and that's fine. I just wish they would have said that up front. I would expect there to be an agenda because somebody's putting up the money to do this, taking the time, and
that's interesting.
That.
I was interviewed for it, and they used little snippets of me, but they were quick, short things, so they really didn't have much room to edit.
Some of the results of the 2003, and I don't know anything about the 2000, this recent one, but back then, boy, it was the sort of the classic hack job, with some people. I mean, in my case, it wasn't because they just didn't want my view in the show, which again is their prerogative. But it was really a learning experience for me, so I declined this time.
Okay, well, tell us your views, Michael. Lots of new listeners to Coast. I'm talking about tens of thousands of new people added to our ever-growing family here who are just beginning to hear about you. Well, tell us your views on this.
Well, I sort of got drawn into this in 2001 after I wrote a novel called The Facade, and it had nothing to do with Zecharia Sitchin. I had not heard of him. I had heard of Eric von Daniken
Sure.
At the time, and then I was on Coast to Coast once, and I got some questions about this, and then also just prior to that, and so I started looking at Zecharia Sitchin, and at first I thought I'd found a kindred spirit because this was, by the biographical description, someone who was into ancient Near Eastern studies and also into this sort of thing. It turned out, what I sort of read when I got his books, I got the first two books and read them. It didn't sort of match what my own expectation was, and so I was constantly asked, to comment on this, and so I disagree on a number of issues with Zecharia Sitchin. I don't I don't look at some of the passages in the Bible and some of the Mesopotamian texts the way he does, as far as the idea of them presenting evidence for alien visitation and things like that. But I actually view it as a separate issue from the bigger question of, could there be extraterrestrials? Could they, have come here? Could they come here at some point? I mean, all those to me are separate issues, and they're not really revolving around, this particular issue or this particular person. So I disagreed with him on the basis of sometimes grammar, sometimes translation. I think our biggest, our sharpest disagreements are he has certain really key ideas that he asserts from Mesopotamian tablets. And if you actually go look, for instance, if you look for all the occurrences of Anunnaki, which anyone listening here can do online, all this stuff is online now. It wasn't back in 2003, but now you can look. And some of the things he says about the Anunnaki just aren't there. And so that becomes a real sharp point of contention when I say, look, it's not a translation issue. It's an issue of, is it there or not? And it's not that he's really making it up. What he's doing is he's reading the story, and then he's assigning sort of a narrative over top of it, if that makes any sense. It's like if I read Tom Sawyer, and then for the characters in Tom Sawyer and the places and the events, I sort of put a narrative over that, sort of an interpretive web over that. That's really what he's doing. I mean, he's a smart guy. He's not just, I'm here to sort of make things up and fabricate things and all that sort of thing. It's really sort of a merging of his story that he's imagining on, some of these texts, and it's almost like an allegory, but of course he doesn't view it as an allegory.
Well, in my discussions with him, ongoing, I think he actually believes what he's been able to interpret.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he's completely sincere, and he really feels that he's latched on to something here and really believes it. I've actually heard a number of fairly, what's the word I'm looking for? Some of them have been pretty nasty things said about him by other researchers and even other talk show hosts, sort of off the record. And
I call them the internet haters.
Yeah,
They're out there.
I'm just not buying that. I've heard really weird things too about how he's a reptilian and he's part of this.
No, I don't think he's a reptilian.
Yeah, come on.
Though I did trip over his tail at the event.
Yeah, it's just really strange. I mean,
I like him. I have a lot of respect for him. He's 90 years old. He and I have developed a interesting relationship. He feels very comfortable with me. When I first started doing this program, he wasn't sure if he wanted to do it, and now he insists. He had retired from doing any radio shows, but he's got another workout, which we'll talk about when he gets better.
Right.
And he insisted. He said, "No, I have to come on Coast to Coast with George. I want to." And somebody was, "Well, what about this other show?" And his publisher would talk to him. He went, "No." I like his theories. You know, when I picked up the 12th Planet, his first in a series of books on the Earth Chronicles, I was mesmerized by it. You know, as I've been Edgar Casey and even you, Michael, with your work, of his interesting theory. So tell me, why is it because of your background in ancient languages and text you believe he's interpreted them wrong? Is that the main issue?
Well, I think really the main issue with me is that, let me give you an illustration. There are certain key ideas.
And let me do a quick overview for people
Sure.
on what Sitchin believes. He believes that there's another planet in our solar system, comes around every 3,600 years. It's been the basis for worldwide calamities on this planet, floods, you name it, whenever it gets close, in that the inhabitants of that planet needed gold to